Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. The Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for friends sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. In today's episode, we talk to nutritionist Daniella Percan. Daniella is a qualified nutritionist with a background as a chef. Her journey to nutrition started with her own health problems, which led her to love all things nutrition, histamine, and mold. She absolutely loves watercoloring, painting, and journaling. She loves to go for bushwalks and reading. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Daniella.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited because it's my first podcast, so I'm very honored.
That's amazing.
To say the least.
I've got so much knowledge to share and I can't wait. I mean, who says that they love histamine and mold?
I know, someone who's probably gone through it. It's a very, very niche and obscure topic, I have to say.
Yeah, I love that. So did you used to be a chef? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so my first, qualification, I was a chef. You know, I didn't really know where I wanted to go in life. So I decided, cooking, let's explore that. It's a very, very hard industry. So once I got into it, I was like, oh boy, I don't think I can do this long term. And then I guess just through that and through my own health, issues at the time, I was like, okay, well, nutrition, that's another thing. I love nature, I love growing food. What's in food? How does our body work? And just kind of evolved naturally like that. So,
I love that. So what was your favorite meal to cook as a chef?
Oh, I worked predominantly, first it was Japanese restaurant. That was amazing. That was really fun. So anything soup based. So miso soup was like my favorite go-to thing to make from scratch, I have to say.
Oh my gosh, I would absolutely love to try that. That's amazing. I love miso soup from scratch, not from a packet.
From scratch. No, that's right. So getting the dried seaweed leaves, just doing the broth, everything.
So does it take a few hours to make it?
Maybe I would say a big pot. So we're talking maybe 5 liters I was making at that time, maybe like an hour or two.
Yeah.
Just to have everything simmering and then, it turns out really good. Really good.
Good quality food takes time, 100%.
Exactly.
100%. So we wanted to get to know you a little bit more before we dive deep into this amazing topic and so much valuable information, and the audience is going to get so much out of it. I want to find out what have been the key turning points in your journey to where you are today. I mean, we've spoken a little bit about you being a chef and then moving into nutrition, but have there been any other key turning points that moved you to where you are now?
Probably, so going back to that whole chefing experience, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. So that was, I have to say, that was like one of the biggest key turning points, that I faced, going through a chronic pain condition, working on your feet all day, 12 hours. I was like, nah, I can't do this. Went into nutrition. So that was the first one. And then second turning point, I have to say, is probably what I'm going through now. The mold and the histamine has really triggered me to kind of think, okay, reevaluate just so many aspects of your life. Like, where are you living? How is your, work lifestyle? How does it fit with your, your health? And how flexible can it be? So definitely I would say those two.
Yeah, amazing. So when did you get diagnosed with the mold and histamine issue? How did that occur? What happened?
So I was working with a naturopath with my endometriosis, and it came back. We were exploring histamine because I was starting to get just out of the blue hay fever. I never experienced hay fever in my life, but all of a sudden I was getting the itchy face, nosebleeds, sinus congestion, just anxiety, can't sleep, all that sort of stuff. So we did a couple of testing, came back, I had high blood histamine levels, through the roof. It was crazy. So I was like, okay, there's a histamine picture. Methylation's not working as well. So we did a lot of work with that. And then it came to a point where I was getting better, but then I was still reacting to histamine, and then I started to regress. And I was like, okay, well, mold. So I actually did muscle testing for mold, like as a kinesiology area that she used, or technique, I should say. And yeah, it came back as mold. So that's how, and that was only last year that I found out that I had mold issues, but it's probably been under the surface for a couple of years, to be honest with you. It's just the endo was the bigger thing that was happening at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting how we have, one symptom and then it brings up so many more other things. And you're like, I don't want to open the can of worms because all these worms are coming out. And it's kind of like,
exactly.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to look at the root cause of what is causing this.
Oh, so true. It was really funny because at the time, I kind of like looked at it as my body was like, okay, well, we've dealt with the endo, but hey, I kind of have this hiding in the corner that I've been suppressing for a couple of years. Here's mold. I was like, oh my gosh, just when you get rid of one thing, something else, pops its head out of the ground. So so that was quite interesting.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. So look, here on the podcast, we talk a lot about success and how it means different to different people and how it means different to ourselves a few years ago to now. So I wanted to find out, before we go into a bit deeper about the topic, I want to find out, what does success look like for Daniella right now?
So I've had a big think about this one, because I used to put success with money. So I was like, once I get, the stable job, the middle income wage, the 9 to 5, I'll be set. I'll be, happy. That's my success. But now I'm like, no way. Like, if I can wake up and I'm happy to do what I'm doing, I'm living abundantly through, money, but also your emotional happiness. You just love what you're doing. I'm like, that to me is success at the moment.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
and it would have changed through the years.
Oh, it definitely has. It's changed multiple times. Definitely. Like when I was a chef, I was dying for that 9 to 5. And then when I got into that 9 to 5, I was like, oh, actually, this is quite bullshit.
Yeah.
I hate it. It's very, very chained.
Yeah. And it's, it's not the nicest feeling to feel stuck and chained up, like you said. And then it affects your emotional health, which affects your health and disease causing and so forth.
That's right. Exactly. You seem to just halt in progress, whether it's health-wise, emotional-wise. You just feel like you're just stuck in all aspects. So, yeah.
100%. Well, thanks for sharing with us your experience with, mold, histamines, health issues, being a chef and so forth. And let's get into today's topic, which is histamine intolerance the cause of your mysterious health issues? Because there's so many individuals out there who may have mysterious health issues. And what I mean by that is they say, I've got this, they go to the doctor and the doctor goes, no, kind of, you're making all this up. And then they feel like they are making it up, but they may not actually be. And it actually may be a histamine intolerance. So let's start off with the 101 on histamines. What are histamines?
Yeah, so I guess histamine, everyone knows that they're, in related to hay fever. So they're things that when you breathe in pollen, if you have, obviously suffer from hay fever, you breathe in the pollen, it gives you those allergy symptoms. But histamines actually play a really important role in the body. So first and foremost, they're a neurotransmitter. So they're keeping us, awake, alert. They give us that cognitive function, which is why when people take, say, like a Benadryl PM, you absolutely zonk out, because this has that antihistamine action in there that just, stops all that histamine release, and it just, crashes you. So we do need it for that sleep-wake cycle. It's helpful for like smooth muscle contraction, regulating blood pressure. But then on the other aspect, it's a signaling molecule. So it gets released when there's some sort of like a biotoxin in our body. So what we'll get into mold. So, it detects something in our blood, like pollen, mold, and says, hey, immune system, come over here. We need to sort this out. So that's pretty much what histamine is doing in our body. And I guess like we've got histamine receptors kind of everywhere. So there's 4 like class or four groups of histamine receptors. So we've got the H1, which that's where our smooth muscle, or that's where they are in our smooth muscle tissue. So blood vessels, skin, your typical hay fever symptoms. And then you've got a second group, which are all in the intestinal tract. They're up along the vagus nerve, so could, get diarrhea symptoms, getting a bit of anxiety. There's more in the central nervous system. So that's, we have histamines interfering with sleep and behavior. And then the last one, we've got histamine receptors in our bone marrow, our large intestines, and white blood cells. So that's where we're kind of getting that immune response and that inflammatory response. So when you look at where histamine receptors are in our body, then you can kind of understand, it's like, whoa, the symptom picture is massive. Like you can have someone walk in, experiencing 10 symptoms from different areas of our body, and then a second person will walk in still suffering from histamine intolerance, but 10 totally different symptoms altogether. So and I think that's why it can be so hard to detect, and people just, go through this year after year, and it's like, well, they might get told, oh, your insomnia is because, I don't know, you're stressed. Your anxiety is because of your lifestyle. So different things, I guess, like symptom-wise, can just be hidden and masked, or not be taken seriously.
Yeah. I love that you went into detail about how the H1, H2, H3, they're found in H4, are found in different aspects of our body. And then, like you said, the symptom picture is just diverse dramatically from, smooth muscle tissue issues to nervous system issues and so forth. So someone listening to this now, what are some common signs and symptoms of histamine intolerance that they may be experiencing?
Yeah, so I guess right off the bat, looking at your typical hay fever symptoms that are not associated with the pollen season. So if you're still getting the itchy nose, the scratchy, itchy throat, maybe skin rashes, that's not, summer, spring, that could be a really good indicator. But then, looking at as well, anxiety, and in women, like pretty severe menstrual cramps, maybe like insomnia as well. So, and just constantly getting sick. So if someone's like, constantly run down with a cold, flu, maybe even like more commonly chest infections, because we do have histamine receptors in our like bronchial tract. So definitely a lot to do with like chest conditions as well.
Yeah, so that's a wide range of signs and symptoms right there, from insomnia to skin issues to, this and that. So this is why this individual may go to the doctor and it just be mystery sign and symptoms.
Yeah, exactly right. And they probably have blood work done, they're like, oh, but your iron level's fine, so don't know where, maybe you're not sleeping enough. So they're just kind of left with, okay, well, my blood work's fine, but I'm still having all these crazy symptoms.
Yeah. And they're not making it up. It's real.
Exactly. And these are real symptoms. And, you can go from, say, starting with one or two symptoms, then years later, you have all these myriad of symptoms that just slowly creep up on you. So, and that's probably another reason why it can kind of just take so long to diagnose as well.
100%. So how does gut health influence histamines, in particular the connection between histamine intolerance and leaky gut? How does that link together?
Yeah, so when we're looking at leaky gut, that's obviously, inflammation in our intestinal tract, and that can be from antibiotic use, stress, like chronic stress, like poor diet. So there's a few things that can contribute to that. And what happens is when we don't have a really nice, healthy, intact, intestinal tract, we don't have enough of this enzyme called DAO that's being produced. And this enzyme is the one that's responsible for breaking down histamines, predominantly that we eat. So histamines that land in our gut, we need that DAO to break it down. So when we don't have that, we've got these histamines, that can be recirculated back into the bloodstream. Another way is with leaky gut, there's often dysbiosis. So with dysbiosis, we've got bacteria, and what bacteria do is that they break down histidine to form histamines. So they're kind of working in that fermentation process. So again, you kind of your body's like unable to break down the histamine. It might be making histamine from the amino acids that we're eating, and you kind of being exposed to like more histamine in that sense.
Yeah. So does the gut bacteria assist with the histamine breakdown?
So when we have the dysbiosis and it's the bad bacteria, it ferments, to create more histamine.
Okay. Wow. That's such a good link, because a lot of people wouldn't know that, wouldn't be aware that their gut can actually causing more histamines and causing all of these issues. So if their gut health is not on point, they might have that itchy skin, that insomnia, and so forth.
Exactly. And to be honest, and addressing your gut, that's looking at a root cause. So you're kind of hitting the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And you did mention histamine with foods. Are you able to touch upon that? Like, what are some foods and drinks that may be high in histamines, and how does it actually affect our health? Because yes, you spoke about those receptors that, histamine receptors that are found, but histamine, we can get it through our food.
That's right. So when I first went on the low histamine diet, I wanted to cry, because it's like, so I'm from, a European background, and it's literally all the foods that are traditionally European, like your antipasto plate goes out the window. So you're looking at like your salami, so anything aged, cured, preserved. So all your smoked meats, ham, salami, gone. Your like olives, what else? Like your gherkins, so anything preserved in a vinegar, that's a high histamine food. We're looking at alcohol, peanuts, wheat, and then from fruit and veggies, it's things like avocados, bananas, mangoes, broccoli, spinach. The list is massive. It's so big. So that's a few different ones. Carob as well. So I have heard people mention chocolate. I noticed I didn't have much of a reaction with chocolate, but with carob I did. And like your kefir, sauerkraut.
Foods that you're mentioning, most of them are kind of like the superfoods that people are told to eat more of, like the sauerkraut, the kefir, the olives, and so forth, like, fermented stuff. And it's kind of like, you should put more of this in your diet. And you think you're eating the right thing by making yourself, let's say, an avocado, banana, mango smoothie in the morning. That may be setting you off dramatically with what you're saying, because the histamine in your body then just rises dramatically.
It does. And so that's, I guess, the issue with those more fad diets. Like everyone, a couple of years ago went on the whole kefir and kombucha craze. And I was like thinking, well, it's not for everyone. So definitely can be contributing to your symptoms. And another thing that's interesting about histamines is depending on where you are in your treatment. So if you're just figuring out, you're really reactive, your histamine bucket, so how much histamine you can tolerate before you get really insane symptoms might be really little. So you might have to be on a really strict diet, whereas someone who is a little bit further down the track in their treatment, they might not be as reactive. They might be able to have their eggs with sauteed spinach for breakfast, an avocado with lunch, and then by dinner time they might be reacting. So I guess that's kind of like the good thing about going on a low histamine diet. You can eventually gauge how much you can tolerate. So it's not a forever diet. it's definitely not a forever diet.
And it's different for everyone, like you said. So some individuals might be listening to this might be like, oh, I might have anxiety. But it'd be interesting for them to know when they have that avocado or the banana or the sauerkraut, does the anxiety get worse? Does it get better? Yeah. Does it actually affect it? But that takes a lot of self-awareness to go through that.
It definitely does. And I guess that's like a bit of a learning game. You can figure it out for yourself. It's just a bit of a trial and error. Just through experience.
So you said you went on to the antihistamine diet. What is the antihistamine diet in particular?
Yeah, so it's basically just cutting out and eliminating those high histamine foods that we were just talking about. And so just eliminating that so you stop being so, reactive. It's about symptom control. And just to help reduce that histamine load that our bodies, carrying, in order to just speed up speeding up how fast you can get better.
Yeah, awesome. And so the antihistamine diet is not a forever diet. Is that right? That's what you said. Yeah,
definitely not. So it's a very restrictive diet if you were to stick with it, and because it also includes being mindful of leftovers. I forgot to mention, so leftover foods, which is a big one. And you can't be on this type of diet forever. It'll drive you nuts. Like, I know I was like, what? I can't eat, a piece of salami ever in my life. Like, or have a kombucha. So it's just there to help with that symptom management while you're getting to those root causes, so that, further down the track, you can introduce those foods really successfully and maybe just see, okay, I'm still reacting to alcohol, that's fine, but I can have my avocado, I can have my, mangoes, broccoli, spinach, dried chili, that's another one.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, eating out on that diet would be absolutely impossible in a way.
It was so hard. I remember having to order pizza and I was like, okay, gluten-free base, can't have tomato base, just garlic butter and a bit of cheese sometimes, or chicken. So it's really hard. Yeah. A lot of eating in.
Yeah, that's crazy. But at least then you're able to get to the root cause of it and see what food actually So is it staged? Like, is it stages where you introduce and see how you go, or?
You can definitely do that. That's how I did it. So the couple of really high triggering foods, like your alcohol, paprika, dried chili, and spinach, they were the ones that I probably introduced last, and even now, not at all. So I guess it's working with the practitioner to really have a good plan in place and be like, okay, start strict, and then they can guide you with what's not as triggering to kind of lead you there, see how you feel, and then keep going from there. So it's a bit hard to navigate if you're doing it by yourself, but you can work with a practitioner, and there's some pretty good lists as well, like for high, low, and medium.
Yeah, there's some absolutely amazing lists out there, and I might put some in the show notes for the audience to have a look at, and they're going to be surprised, like, what?
It's a massive list.
Yeah. So I also wanted to know histamines mould, right? So what is the link between the two? Because you didn't mention that at the start, that you were exposed to mould and histamines and so forth, and it may be part of the mystery illness that the audience may have, or may have those signs and symptoms. So what is the link between the two?
Yeah, so I guess leading into mould, like with my experience was, so I did all the right things. I was on that low histamine diet. I was working on my gut. Methylation is another key issue with metabolizing histamines. That's another area to look at. And I was like, okay, this is working fine. I was getting better, but then I started triggering with histamines. So mold is kind of an interesting area to look at, because I guess when you're looking at someone who's suffering from mold, they're chronically inflamed. So that immune system is already, triggering. And with that, with an activated immune system, you have mast cell activation. So mast cells, again, they're releasing histamines, increasing your histamine load. So as the person's eating, they're like, wow, I'm still really, really sensitive. That's got, my methylation's fine, gut's fine. Potentially looking at mold as an issue. And again, when we think about histamine as a signaling molecule, it's being released because there's biotoxins in the bloodstream that need to be metabolized. The immune system has to take care of that. So histamine's released to then alert the immune system, hey, we've got these biotoxins, you need to take care of this. So again, we're just having all this histamine being released along with the mold spores and the mycotoxins, which are causing a whole other myriad of symptoms. So I guess that's kind of the connection there with that inflammatory response triggering mast cell activation, and then the histamines being released because there are biotoxins in the blood that need to be taken care of.
Yeah, that's crazy. So an individual it's a huge topic. So an individual who may have been exposed to mold, so you're saying that they're inflammatory all over, which causes mast cell activation, which then causes an increase of histamines, which then can cause all those signs and symptoms that we spoke about of having high histamine diet. High histamines in your blood. Yeah. So the thing is you may actually be eating a low histamine diet, but if you're exposed to mold, it kind of does the same thing. Is that right?
Exactly right. And it depends on how much mold you're being exposed to. Is the individual able to clear out mold effectively? Because in this case, the person would definitely have issues with mold clearance as well. So they have a histamine issue and definitely mold. And it could be genetics, or it could just be that they're in a really moldy house without realizing. So it's just, and you wind up being in a bit of like an inflammatory cytokine storm. And just everything is just inflamed. Everything's just triggering altogether.
Yeah, and I guess this is why, like we keep going back to, these individuals have these mystery signs and symptoms, and they're just not feeling themselves. And it's like, what happened when you started not feeling yourself? Did you move houses? Did you move into did you buy a secondhand car that has mold? Did you start a new workplace somewhere where it's moldy? Were you exposed to moldy foods even? Like there's so many things to take into consideration, isn't there?
Exactly. And then obviously in this instance, the mold is another root cause. So when you get to the issue, or to the can you hear my dogs?
Yeah, they're excited. They agree.
They agree. Now I lost my train of thought.
No, we're just saying like the mold is like the root cause of the issues for some of these individuals.
Yes. Yeah. So the mold, in this instance, you have to treat the mold, whether it's definitely has to be a remediation. I've tried to out supplement mold. It doesn't work. So definitely remediating the environment or just getting out of the environment. Then histamine issues will go away. Well, most likely they will go away.
Yeah.
So
it's so interesting that we mentioned the link between the histamines and mold, because not a lot of people make that link and not a lot of people understand it. So I'm glad that you're able to educate the audience so they actually know now the simple steps of how mold can activate their histamines or increase the histamine.
And I guess a big red flag would be if you're doing everything right with the histamines and you had a small window of feeling better and then for some reason you've had regression. Then you know that there's something still missing. And mold is one thing to look at, and there are a couple of other like conditions as well that can trigger histamine. But definitely environmentally, mold's a big one. I mean, 50% of houses in Australia are water damaged, and I think genetically people who are genetically predisposed to not being able to break down mold, that floats between about 22-25%, I believe. So it's one to really look at as a serious condition.
100%, definitely.
Yeah.
So what is the usual treatment for someone with histamine intolerance? I mean, we've spoken about the diet, but is there anything else that, someone talks to a healthcare professional and they go, look, you have histamine intolerance, and they're just like, well, I don't even know what that means, but okay. But what is the usual treatment for that?
Yeah. I guess the first port of call would be, just cut out the histamines from the diet, and then going on like a quercetin and a bromelain as a supplement. So the bromelain will have that anti-inflammatory action, so helping with that, all that inflammation. And then the quercetin is going to help stabilize mast cells just so they're not degrading at a fast rate to release histamine. So that's kind of looking at your symptom control. And then for long-term relief, definitely you have to look at, well, what are my gut issues? Do I have any sort of dysbiosis, gut infection, SIBO, and working with that? So there's a whole range of, treatments that you can do for that. So probiotics, prebiotics, and like glutamine, all that. And then definitely, again, looking at your methylation. So, do we have healthy methylation?
Yeah.
So looking at your B12, B6, are we making enough glutathione? Do we have low levels of homocysteine? And just looking at the liver in that way.
Yeah, I love that. So there's a lot that individuals will have to do if they've got some histamine intolerances.
Unfortunately.
But is there any tests or anything that can determine that someone may be histamine intolerant? I mean, look, the audience might be listening and might be like, oh, this might sound like me, but what is the next step? Like, what can they do?
Yeah, so there's not a whole range of specific testing out there. You can get your histamine levels checked. I don't know about going through a GP, but you could definitely ask your GP. It is a functional test. So generally, like a naturopath, nutritionist, allied health physician will be open to that. And that'll give you a clear indication of, okay, what's histamine levels like in our blood? That's pretty much the only specific test. And then outside of that would be just non-specific testing, like looking at your gut microbiome, doing a mapping with that, and again, looking at that methylation. So unfortunately, it does seem to be only histamine levels.
Yeah. Are you able to go a bit into methylation and histamines? I mean, you've spoken a little bit about it, but what is the key link between the methylation and the histamine?
Yeah. So, along with DAO, there's another enzyme that we need to break down histamine, and this is more involved in our liver and also along our central nervous system, and it's called HNMT, so histamine and methyltransferase.
Yeah, I always get confused with those names, I know.
HNMT for short. And this is... like I said, it's made in the liver, and we do need a healthy amount of like SAMI and just that whole like methionine SAMI picture to work correctly. So that goes very in depth. It's a very interesting route, methylation.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because if your methylation cycle is not running well, like you said, it can lead to high histamines for individuals. So there's a number of things these individuals need to, I guess, investigate, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So, and that's why, once again, it can just take so long to kind of get diagnosed because it's just, everything just seems so nondescript sometimes, just with the symptoms and the testing. So, but if you find definitely working with a healthcare practitioner who might be more open to looking at histamines or they understand it a bit better, will definitely make the process a lot easier to uncover.
Yeah. And like you said, they can do that test to see the histamines in their body at the time. They can do the GI gut map to see what's happening there, because you also mentioned that the gut bacteria assists with all that. And then also looking at like the MTFHR, like the genetics if they want to. So there's a number of ways. I mean, it'll take probably a few months to actually determine to see what's happening for these individuals.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess in the meantime, if they do suspect it, just try going on a low histamine diet and see if it works. That's probably not the quickest way, but the easiest thing that you can do for yourself at the time.
Yeah, it's daunting for a lot of people to go.
I know. I think when I started, I didn't even go hard at it. I just was like, I can only handle cutting out so many things. And then eventually I was like, no, I have to do it. I think it took me a couple of weeks to get my my head around it. So
Yeah. So we spoke about going back to the treatment that you said. You mentioned quercetin, and what was the other one?
Oh, bromelain. So usually
Bromelain.
you can find them together in a supplement. So they usually go hand in hand. They
And
work really well synergistically.
yeah, and how do they help with histamine intolerance?
Yeah, so the quercetin is the main one. So that's stabilizing mast cells. So the mast cells aren't degranulating and releasing that histamine. And then the bromelain's going in and helping with reducing that inflammation. So that's really going to help when you have those inflamed sinuses, your headaches, and you're just feeling it's really, irritated and just the itchy throat and all that. So it's going to help remediate that.
Yeah, and they're absolutely beautiful. And like you said, they usually come together and they work together amazingly in the body. And there's so many individuals have had amazing support and relief from their symptoms.
Yes. Yeah, they do work really well. So
beautiful. And can you find them in food anywhere, or would you get them kind of more out of a supplement form because you need a higher level?
They definitely are in foods. So mostly like your citrus based. I'm just trying to think. I can't remember where else. Tomatoes, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, you wouldn't get a therapeutic dose.
Yeah.
So I would go straight to the supplement.
Yeah. 100%. I couldn't agree more with you on that one. Yeah. But yeah, you can get all of them out of foods, like you said, and bromelain, pineapple, that's what comes to mind for me. Good old pineapple.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure that, funnily enough, I'm pretty sure that falls under the medium to low histamine.
Oh, there you go. Isn't that interesting? There you go. That's so interesting.
It's kind of like catch-22 there, but, definitely as a supplement, it works brilliantly.
Yeah, 100%. So what would you say, now that we've mentioned some of these supplements and so forth, but what would you say would be some practical tips for the audience to incorporate to assist them if they do have histamine intolerances?
Yeah, and it just comes down to the diet, honestly. When you're first starting out, it's definitely looking at your foods. And one of the most key things is keeping everything fresh. So just limiting your leftovers, trying to find, fresh veggies. Don't let, your fruits overripe. They're probably the simplest and easiest things that you can implement pretty much straight away.
Yeah. And like you said, that diet that we spoke about. And I know the one thing that has histamine, but also assists with releasing the histamine is alcohol. And a lot of individuals, that's sometimes a bit hard to give up that weekend, the grog. But that is, from what I've seen, one of the biggest causes of these histamine intolerance issues.
Definitely is. Not only because it's a high histamine, drink, but it's also causing that inflammation in the gut as well. So you're kind of giving yourself those histamines, and then at the same time, you're kind of undoing, all your gut work. So, you don't have that enzyme being released to help break it down. Yeah,
that's a great link. That's an absolutely great link that you're doing there. I mean, so if, you have these symptoms that are just mystery symptoms, it's kind of like, okay, well, if we can reduce the alcohol, eliminate the alcohol, which is high histamines, and any of the other foods that may be high histamines, and then it's kind of getting a bit better. It's like, oh, maybe that is the issue there.
Exactly. And often the case, that's what happens. And then you go, oh, okay, maybe I'm imagining I'm getting better, and you have, a sip of alcohol and you're like, oh shit, actually. Like, why is my nose itchy? It's like, okay, you know what? That's this, consolidation there that you're on the right track.
Yeah, 100%. Beautiful. So what has helped you mainly? What is the few things that have helped you mainly with your histamine intolerances? Besides taking on the diet, I believe.
Yes, honestly, that was my lifesaver for such a long time. What symptoms did you have?
What signs and symptoms did you have yourself?
So mine was kind of tied in with the mold, but it was anxiety, the itchy nose. My sinuses were so inflamed, and I'm talking about day in, day out. Sinus pressure like you wouldn't believe. Nothing was relieving it. Headaches that would last days. And I was, at a point where taking, Neuromol sometimes didn't even cut it. So symptoms can be just that severe. I guess my endometriosis got better as the histamines, my histamine level got better as well. So that was one of my major symptoms, and just insane fatigue. Yeah, sleeping so many hours a night.
Yeah, and a lot of people listening will just be like, that's exactly how I'm feeling right now. So what, without giving them advice, what would be like, would you tell them is the first thing that they should do? But I know you said, so would it be to try and eliminate that food with the diet? Would it be kind of to get tested to see the histamine? Would it be to investigate with a practitioner? What do you think would be a good starting point from them? Because that's what they're looking for, a starting point.
Yeah, I would start with a practitioner, because sometimes doing things on your own, it just can get really confusing. And whereas when you work with a practitioner, you're kind of getting that clear guidance and that weight lifted off your shoulders, that, you know, you're getting help, and you have a path, a plan, and you don't have to kind of figure it out yourself. So I would definitely go down that route, and then you'll be able to do the functional testing, the appropriate ones as well, not just like your standard, you know, full blood count that probably won't show much and the doctor says you're fine. Definitely I would go down at like a practitioner and get the proper functional testing done.
Yeah, I love that. It's an absolutely great starting point, because then you're working with someone who understands the complex systems of histamines and so forth. It's not the most it's not the most energetic topic to talk about, but it is definitely but it is definitely one that needs to be spoken about, like about these mystery issues that people have. So I'm so glad that we spoke about it today, and I'm so glad that you gave your information input into this. So to finish off, I ask all my guests, as this is the Natural Health Podcast, what is your best kept natural health hack that you may do every day? What do you want to share with us?
I was having to think about this. I couldn't pinpoint one down, but a really good tip that I was told by a naturopath. So I used to get a lot of throat infections. So I would have my lymph nodes, my sore throat constantly, especially throughout winter. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And she gave me this one tip. It was so simple. So it's literally just like half a glass of warm water, a pinch of pink salt, and 2 drops of tea tree, and you gargle it. And I kid you not, like your sore throat would be gone. And any kind of like raised lymph nodes, gone. And it saved me so many times from having a full-blown throat infection. I would be having the worst head cold. So that was like...
That is amazing. That's an absolutely amazing health hack. And you've got experience with it yourself, and you're like,
it works. It definitely works.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Look, Daniella, is there anything else that you want to say to the audience that may have histamine intolerances or mold issues or anything along those lines, that you wish to say to them before we close off the podcast?
Yeah, well, I guess I just want to, say that even when, you're told that your blood works fine, we can't find anything wrong, if you're still feeling like there's something wrong, you're not like your usual self, maybe, this fatigue, it's just not you, just definitely explore it. I would 100% just find whatever answers you need and don't stop until you get them, really, because it's no fun living with these long-term chronic illnesses that just keep getting worse and worse.
Yeah, well said. I agree with you 100%. Get to the bottom of it, get to the root cause, and that healthy avocado may actually be doing harm to you.
I know. All that sauerkraut and kombucha that everyone jumped on. It's not for everyone, unfortunately.
100%, 100%. It's not for anyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, where can they get in touch with you mainly?
Yeah, so I'm mostly at the moment on Instagram. So it's health and wellness _ by Daniella. So I'm doing just posts every now and again, a lot to do with my journey with mold, if anyone's interested. And then, I definitely want to get like a website up and running very soon to do blog posts. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'll put all that details in the show notes below so they're able to access you and add you on Instagram and check out your amazing content. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Natural Health Podcast, Daniella. I really appreciate your time and the explain to us what histamines are, what it can cause, what signs and symptoms it can do, the connection with MTHFR, mold and histamines and so forth. I love that you brought it all together and then, gave us some absolutely amazing practical tips and supplements and so forth that may be able to assist. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your time.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Thank you for joining us at the Natural Health Podcast. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health.